One rainy night in October, a man was driving past the cemetery. He saw a young boy walking in the rain. The man stopped and asked the boy if he wanted a ride. The boy approached the car. His face was pale, his clothes were wet, and he was shaking like a leaf. He opened the door and got into the passenger seat without saying a word. The man felt sorry for the boy, so he gave him a red sweater to keep him warm. The boy's teeth were chattering and he was still shivering. When they got to the boy's house, the man stopped the car. The boy got out. The man told him to keep the sweater and said he would come back for it the next day. "What's your name?" asked the man. "Timmy," the boy replied. The next day, the man went to the boy's house to pick up his sweater. When he knocked on the door, a woman answered. The man introduced himself and asked if she was Timmy's mother. "What's this about?" she said. The man explained that he had given Timmy a ride the night before in the pouring rain and had given him a red sweater to keep him warm. The woman stared at him and her eyes welled up with tears. "I'm sorry, you must be mistaken," she said. "My son Timmy died almost a year ago." The man apologized and left. He was very confused and his head was spinning. He drove to the cemetery and found Timmy's grave. Lying on top of the grave was his red sweater. Never do what she did. A young couple got married and, after the wedding, they held a reception in the bride's grandmother's house. All their family and friends arrived and they laughed, danced, and sang long into the night. After the wedding reception, the guests decided to play a game of hide and seek. The groom covered his eyes and began counting to 100 while his new bride and the other guests ran out of the room, looking for somewhere to hide. Eventually, the groom had found everyone except his beautiful bride. The other guests began calling out her name and searched everywhere for the young woman. They began to grow more and more uneasy when they couldn't find any trace of her. Eventually they gave up searching and everybody assumed that the girl had run away and left her husband. As the weeks went by, the husband accepted that his beautiful bride must have had second thoughts about their marriage. He decided to forget about her and go on with his life. A few years later, a cleaning lady was dusting in the attic when she came across an old trunk. Out of curiosity, she opened it. Inside the trunk, she found the rotting corpse of a young woman, still dressed in a bridal gown. There was a wedding ring on one bony finger. It was the missing bride. She must have hidden in the trunk and accidentally locked herself inside. It was impossible to tell whether she had suffocated or starved to death, but her face was frozen in a silent scream.
It was past midnight now, and I still had a while until I met my destination. The girl I picked up an hour ago was asleep in the seat beside me. She was a hitchhiker. I couldn't leave a teenager alone at night in the pouring rain, I had to pick her up. She seemed pretty happy that someone was finally giving her a ride. I didn't know her real name, only that her friends call her Jo. She looked so calm, so peaceful. Her brown hair obscured half her gorgeous face, her lips flexed in a barely noticeable smile. She must be having a nice dream. I tried to remember the last dream I had, but had no luck. Then, I felt it, a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. A terrible, ugly feeling. I looked down at the girl as I drove, hoping her smiling face might help me overcome and not give in to the demon within, but I could feel it clawing to get out. I didn't want to. I couldn't. I needed to get the girl out of the car, but that would take too long. It would happen before then. I continued to struggle, fighting an inner battle. Then... no. I couldn't contain it. It happened. I let out the most monstrous fart I'd ever released. It was legendary. It was the kind of thing kids would tell stories about to scare younger kids. I reluctantly looked to see if the beast that escaped my body had woken the girl. It hadn't, but the smile had faded and she looked to be having a nightmare now.
Have you ever seen a ghost? The place known today as Hot Rod Haven is actually a winding and twisting stretch of road called Mitchell Hill Road. Years ago, it used to be a popular spot for teenagers to go and test their racing skills and their cars. That all ended when two teenagers did not come back alive. Back in 1946, a young woman, Sarah Mitchell, and her date Roy Clark were on their way to a dance. As they were coming down the hill, Clark lost control of the car and crashed at the curve. Both teenagers were killed on impact. Since that time, reports claim that the girl's ghost has been seen wandering up the roadway and aimlessly strolling the cemetery at the top of the hill. Over the years, many drivers have seen the apparition on the road at night. Have you ever seen a ghost? The place known today as Hot Rod Haven is actually a winding and twisting stretch of road called Mitchell Hill Road. Years ago, it used to be a popular spot for teenagers to go and test their racing skills and their cars. That all ended when two teenagers did not come back alive. Back in 1946, a young woman, Sarah Mitchell, and her date Roy Clark were on their way to a dance. As they were coming down the hill, Clark lost control of the car and crashed at the curve. Both teenagers were killed on impact. Since that time, reports claim that the girl's ghost has been seen wandering up the roadway and aimlessly strolling the cemetery at the top of the hill. Over the years, many drivers have seen the apparition on the road at night.